Hello, everybody. Welcome into Bills Weekly here on FingerLakes1.com. I am Paul Russo, Kyle Evans, and Jim Sinicropi here with me as always. We'll be recapping and discussing the Bills' loss in the United Kingdom to the Jacksonville Jaguars yesterday in Week 5. I'll also be taking a look ahead to Week 6 against the New York Giants on Sunday Night Football. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor of the podcast, Lil John and Barbie Orthodontics. Dr. Lil John and Dr. Barbie and their outstanding orthodontic team share a common goal to ensure the overall wellness of each of their patients through their exceptional orthodontic care. Check out Dr. Rod and Dr. Liz online at liljohnortho.com. So, I guess no better way to jump right into it. 25-20 Jaguars over the Bills, and it was, frankly, I'll go ahead and say it. I thought it was the most ugly game Buffalo has probably played this year, especially offensively. Kind of hard to maybe gauge overall defensively. I thought defense, they did really well, all things considered, and we'll jump into that as well. But what are your guys' initial thoughts from the game yesterday?
Yeah, you said it well. I think this game was certainly all on the offense. They punted on 6 of their first 7 drives. Just unbelievable. At one point, Sam Martin, the punter, had more punting yards than Josh Allen had passing yards. So it just kind of tells you how it went. The first 3 quarters, it was only 11-7. Jacksonville had the lead, of course. And then in the fourth quarter, I said before we went on air here, the 2 teams combined for 27 points in the fourth quarter. All of those came in the final 7 minutes and 44 seconds of the game. That is truly unbelievable, and it especially kind of shows with all the injuries that the Bills had on defense, how well those backups played in this game. I mean, Josh Allen, if he could have just did something on those first 7 drives, which rightfully so, there were some drop passes and penalties that kind of ruined the drives. But, I mean, it was just ugly all around for the offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jim, what were your thoughts from the game yesterday?
Well, the Bills got to go to a different 5-hour difference time zone. They get there, Thursday night. The Jaguars were already there for 10 days, and they came out flat. I mean, it's called jet lag, and to me, the schedules are already unequal in the NFL, based on teams aren't playing the same teams. But when it comes down to who's going to host an AFC championship game, it's going to come down to one game in the standings. And, making the Bills go to London, play at 9:30 a.m., I mean, it's just it's stupid. If that game was played in Highmark, do you think that the Jaguars would have won? I think the Bills would have won. So it seems kind of arbitrary. I don't care if the NFL gets more money. I don't care if the NFL is exposed to fans in the Europe. Bills fans don't care about that. So it's just kind of stupid. And credit to Jacksonville, they finally looked a little more like the team we thought they would be. But I mean, what's the Jags record now? 3-2.
I believe so. I'd have to double check that.
3-2.
Yeah. So are the Bills, 3-2.
Yeah.
I mean. So, you come off the high of destroying Miami last week, and then, you just tack a loss on the following week, in another continent in a game that nobody saw because they were sleeping, especially if you live on the West Coast. I just think it's ridiculous that the NFL's trying to play all these games in Europe, and it's not fair to teams that have to do it.
Yeah, it caught me off guard. I don't know, you bring up a good point that I've seen actually some people bring up, Jim, actually, is the travel situation that the Bills had. And I don't know. I know a lot of people are, really kind of finger-pointing to that in the not grand scheme.
They didn't leave earlier?
Yeah, not leaving earlier. They were saying they were over there for 50 hours before kickoff, I guess.
They could have got there on Tuesday, right, instead of Thursday?
I guess,
night?
yeah. Right.
Yeah, and apparently I heard this morning on the radio that the Ravens, who play there this weekend against the Titans, left after their game last night, and they're already arriving in London today. They're going to spend the whole week there. So I guess it kind of all comes down to what the teams prefer, but apparently the Bills have been planning this for months of how they're going to go about it. And
they're really analyzing what would be better, and so they got there Thursday night. They stayed up till Friday night, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they held a practice there Friday, and they stayed up all day and then went to bed Friday night. And went to bed Saturday night, and just still the offense came out and looked really, really bad.
Yeah, and you also have to wonder if that makes some of your guys susceptible to injuries, because that's a huge, in addition to the loss, the players they lost to injury in that game Makes it worse. Daquan Jones and probably worse than him, Milano.
Yep. And they went into that game without Shaq Lawson, Greg Russo, Christian Benford, and of course Shadavius White. So I mean, they were really they were dealing with a lot of injuries on defense. And like I said, it was only 11-7 game after 3 quarters. I thought the defense still did a great job.
Yeah, they
and
did.
the Jaguars scored both of their touchdowns in the final quarter, like I said, in the last 7 minutes. So the game was there all along for the offense to take. And every time they had a positive drive going, something negative would happen. And it was very frustrating to watch.
Yeah, I want to go back before we get to the offense. I want to talk about the defense here quick because, look, the injury thing to me was wild. I don't think I've witnessed as a team kind of like it seemed like it was every, I know at one point it was more than or less than this, but every like 5 minutes it seemed like there was another Bill down and the training staff having to go. Name to recognize too, I guess, and this would be like Kingsley Jonathan, who went out, came back in, then got dinged up again, only to come back in. Crazy stuff, and we'll get to maybe the offensive ones here in a second as well. But I mean, obviously, right, Matt Milano, we're probably looking at a season ender. I know nothing official yet, but it doesn't take a doctor, I don't think, anymore to fully know when an air cast is put on. Usually is a bad sign. But, you know, defensively, it was a showing. I mean, we had Elam's, was it first full game back, right? And he had 11 total tackles in the game as well.
Well, it did get exposed quite a bit.
Right.
Calvin Ridley just carved him up.
Yeah.
Jaguars are purposely throwing to him on one-on-one coverage. They knew his weakness, and Calvin Ridley finished with over 100 yards. His first 100-yard receiving game since week 2. I think week 2.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's through the air.
Yep.
Jacksonville ran the ball
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah.
Against Buffalo. You know, ETN had a big game, and then you contrast that with what the Bills were able to do on the ground, and, you know, you're surprised it was even close.
Yeah, Josh Allen was their leading rusher with 14 yards.
Yeah.
Yeah, and before maybe circling back to offense here, Terrell Bernard, 16 total tackles. AJ Epinesa had I thought, a really great game, all
Yes.
things to say, right? 4 tackles, 2 sacks, fumble recovery, also stripped the ball, the 1 point as well. So
Von Miller returned in a limited role.
Only
He
played
had a
20
little bit
snaps of the 88.
Right,
Didn't
but-
play the entire fourth quarter and didn't play most of the third quarter. So there's another guy that didn't play on top of all the guys that have gotten injured. That's why this defensive performance to me was unbelievable.
yeah, offensively, kind of already mentioned, right? We've been sitting here kind of, I think, parading a little bit, and justifiably so, right? The run game collectively as a whole, but yesterday was just absolutely stymied. Allen, right, leading rusher with 14 yards. I mean, the guys after him, right, I think Latavius only had 11, I believe. James Cook had -6. I mean, it was just a certain point where, to me anyway, I kind of was looking at him like, you can't just keep trying to establish a run game when it's just not there. You have to accept that at some point. And I remember one time, they handed the ball off to James Cook, and it seemed like all but one of like the Jaguars defenders were just in on the pile right away. It was nuts. You know, Diggs, 121 yards and a touchdown. Davis, you mentioned, right, 100 yards and a touchdown as well on offense. But, you know, the Davis one, for example, right, coming later on. But it was just a game where we talk about how good the defense was, but offensively, this was about as bad as they've been since week 1 on offense. I don't see another way really around it besides that.
Yeah, there's just no rhythm at all. Like you said, no run game. Gabe Davis dropped a huge ball, which would have gave him a first down late in the game, which could have changed the whole way this game went. Yeah, it was just
Another pivotal moment was the end of the first half when Allen threw the interception. He underthrew Diggs, who was open.
Yep.
You know, great teams, like when you see Kansas City, the way they win games, they always seem to get points at the end of the first half. Then they come back out and get the opening kickoff of the second half. I mean, it's almost like, you know, getting a free possession when you're able to do that. So the Bills weren't able to do that. They go in down 11-7 and then still can't score in the third quarter. And, and meanwhile, Jacksonville racked up 196 rushing yards. We're surprised the Bills didn't lose by more if you just look at the statistics. But, again, you know, the Bills are traveling over to a place with a 5-hour time difference, playing on grass in a soccer stadium in London, and
It was actually turf.
oh, was it
They
turf? Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
they didn't want them playing on their grass, so they put in turf, and obviously a lot of the players were not happy about that.
How
They
do you-
feel like that's why a lot of the injuries happened yesterday.
Because it was
Yep.
not good turf.
Yep. It was like put in last second kind of.
Wasn't there's a video I believe if I can find it I'll send it to you guys if you haven't seen it. But I believe I saw it on Instagram where like the NFL even I think sent it out of like them doing the turf, and I believe not on that specific video, but I remember seeing like Bills players are commenting about how like thin the layer of turf was compared to the. Look, for people who don't know, it's concrete underneath. At the end of the day, your base layer of these venues is concrete. So they're commenting about how thin it was down to the concrete. And look, I'm not medical, whatever by any means. I don't know if it necessarily made one a big factor to the next. Where I do think it does actually play a factor, and I do know this just from experience, is the settling of it. At the end of the day, if they have to do a quick turnaround on something, you're not allowing quote-unquote nature to take its course. And I think that's certainly something to look back on to the point where, again, to go back maybe in the history file of this a little bit, back in 2018, so Tottenham Hotspur Stadium opened in 2018, spring of 2018. It was supposed to open in the fall of 2017, to the point that Tottenham Hotspur had to play their home games at the beginning of the English Premier League season at Wembley. And because of that, they got pushed to a Monday night game after an NFL game that was in Wembley, and the field over there was not able to be prepped enough in time, and Tottenham had to deal with injuries on a similar situation. It's one of those things where, again, I'm not going to go say one way or another, but it does, to me, there has to be some sort of correlation, right?
Yeah, I would just say
between
don't go
both.
over there anymore. Who cares? It's stupid.
Yeah.
I think it's stupid. As an American football fan, like I said, I don't care.
Playing the national anthem in London.
I just don't. I just don't like it.
And I was thinking about it too after this game. To be honest, most of the London games aren't that exciting. Like last week or 2 weeks ago when the Falcons played the Jaguars, it was 23-7. It was just boring. This game was boring for the first 3 quarters. It was 11-7.
Right.
And if you look at even like last year's games, I mean, usually they're two teams that not a lot of people have interest in, and they're just not fun games.
Well, there's a lot of European football or soccer fans. European football fans
There we go.
in America. And they don't come over here and play regular season games here. Like, people in Europe
Yeah,
can
that's
still
true.
be fans of the NFL and, watch the game. I really don't like it. I get upset when I see these things on the schedule. I enjoy Sundays with a full slate of games. You're taking one off, putting it in the morning. In Europe, I never watch those. I just don't like it at all. And now, by allowing Jacksonville to be over there for 2 weeks, they adjust to the time frame a lot quicker than the Bills who come over. And, and there's another game there next week, and it's just makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. When those teams come over here, it's exhibition.
Yeah.
It's not a regular season deal. They're usually playing like, Real Madrid's playing like the MLS All-Star team or something like that.
And a friendly.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I was talking about this off air a little bit, and I kind of want to bring this to light here, and I'm genuinely curious by your opinions on this, guys, because I'm gonna pull something from the Syracuse football fandom side of things here for a sec. For about 3 full seasons, and I know again I might be doing a little bit of apples to oranges here, but I believe there's correlation here. Dino Babers' staff at Syracuse did not have a special teams coordinator. And that hampered the special teams for Syracuse for 3 years until last year we finally brought one on, got things in line a little bit, and now we're back to being a little bit of a special teams U kind of school. Buffalo obviously does not have a true defensive coordinator this year. It's Sean McDermott. He's running the show. And my question to you guys is, if there's a defensive coordinator for the Bills this year, do we see Ken Dorsey probably make the whole year as offensive coordinator? Because I don't. And my logic behind this is the fact that while McDermott may be defensive-minded, he would at least be able to call offensive plays. I'm beginning to question some Dorsey here, just based on some offensive play calling again.
Well,
It's one thing for one full year, your first full year, right? But this year, you have the same deck of cards more or less on offense.
nobody was
It's
complaining about
one of those
Dorsey last week when they crushed Miami, you know?
It's fair.
So, again, this extraneous circumstances, I do think the Bills should have a defensive coordinator. I mean, the amount of preparation and game planning that goes into week to week in the NFL, I don't see why you would want to be down one of your main guy, like McDermott should have a right-hand man in Dorsey and a left-hand man as defensive coordinator. I don't know why Dorsey would want to take on that extra responsibility when you can have someone totally dedicated to it. But that being said, the Bills' defense hasn't really been an issue. But I just, you look at the way the NFL goes every week, unexpected results. Teams that look like crap one week look great the next week. And it has a lot to do with matchups. It has a lot to do with game planning. And, these guys are all professionals. I don't care if you're the Cardinals or the Colts or the Bills or the Chiefs. Your rosters and coaching staffs are filled with professionals. And so, even the Bears, like look at 2 weeks ago, the Bears you would thought would never win a game ever again. Matter of fact, they hadn't won a game since November. Then this week they come out on Thursday night and just win their first game in a year, blowing them out. Look like, a playoff team. And so what's the difference from week to week? Matchups, prep, game plan, and the Giants.
I caught a stray on that one.
Yeah, I think Ken Dorsey has a consistency problem. I mean, look at week one. I just feel like this past week and then week one, there's no adjustments that are made by him. And then I'm just kind of like looking at team stats through 5 weeks, and to know that James Cook is he has the third most receiving yards is mind-blowing. And then you look at Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, neither of them have scored a touchdown. And Dalton Kincaid has 118 yards through 5 games. And
You remember all the hype?
Right.
Dawson Knox has 75.
Yeah.
This is a guy that just handed an extension to. And he has 11 catches for 75 yards in 5 weeks.
They made a big investment in their tight ends, with re-signing Knox and drafting Kincaid. A lot of it didn't make sense to me. And then you look at their output that they've had, and they obviously haven't been run blocking either. So, like, what's going on here? Why, maybe the Bills could have invested in an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman or another receiver. Who knows? But they certainly got a couple good tight ends that they aren't using.
Yeah, and they keep running these 2 tight end sets, which takes obviously a receiver off the field. And they brought in Deontay Hardy. They brought in Trent Sherfield for speed, to replace Isaiah McKenzie. And, I mean, Hardy had a 40-yard catch yesterday, but they finally used him yesterday. Up until that point, they're not throwing deep balls to these guys who are supposed to be running vertical because of their speed. And Gabe Davis, he had 6 catches for 100 yards, but I think 2 or 3 of those came late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
It's Diggs and Allen.
Right.
And there was no run game yesterday. So that's also why the offense struggled so much. I felt like the game plan should have been changed up.
And then on top of it all, you see Diggs get pissed on the sidelines again,
Yeah, he threw the tablet.
Yeah, so it's like, what is it, dude? You're getting thrown to 20 times a game. It seems like you're putting up huge numbers, and just because you have 1 or 2 bad quarters, you're going to start throwing stuff. Like, I couldn't tell if he was mad at Josh Allen or just mad.
I think just mad in general, because he did. He had a chance to catch a ball one-on-one and dropped it, so I think he was kind of frustrated.
Yeah, so you want Josh Allen to come over and slam down a tablet in front of Diggs because he dropped the ball? That's the same thing with the interception at the end of the first half. That was a 50-50 ball that Diggs didn't come down with. It ended up being an interception. It was a little underthrown, but that made it a 50-50 ball. And, Diggs not only didn't catch it, but he let the Jacksonville defender catch it.
And then another guy, too, Khalil Shakir. He was supposed to have his big year this year, second-year player. He's supposed to be the number 3 receiver. And he has 27 yards in 5 games.
He gets the ball in the flat, like, for a 2-yard game.
And then look at this. Look at the reception difference. Obviously, Diggs is the leading reception leader with 39. The next closest, 18, Gabe Davis. Yeah. Look at the jump there.
Right.
Gabe Davis is your number 2 receiver, and he has 18 receptions. I mean, they got a problem on
makes
offense,
you-
and I think it is play calling at times. But I get it. I get your point. We didn't complain last week, but I thought that was Ken Dorsey's best game even from last year.
But
play
is it
calling.
because Dorsey's not calling the plays, or Allen's not working through his progressions? He's just like focused in on Diggs because Diggs is always on his ass wanting the ball, so he just like says he knows pre-snap that he's going to Diggs before he even goes through any progressions.
Yeah, and I also think they need to stop with these 2 tight end sets, though. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly through 5 weeks, you're taking another speedy receiver off the field doing that.
And you're
And
not
what has
using-
Dalton Kincaid done? I mean, you see a couple catches here and there, but none of his catches are well known because nothing productive happens. He gets maybe 8 yards at most sometimes.
No end zone
Yeah.
catches, that's for sure.
I just don't like the way the rhythm of the offense has gone through 5 weeks, other than last week, or 2 weeks ago when they played Miami now. I mean, that was great. That was fun to watch. Everything was working. The run game was working. But consistency is a problem with this team.
But you can find a lot of 3-2 teams in the NFL right now, and that's what the Bills are, and that's not in a position to get that home field advantage in an AFC championship game, or even in a position yet to secure the division and not be a wild card. So I mean, to me, the first 5 weeks for the Jets has been a mild disappointment. The only reason it's not a major disappointment is because at times they have looked like that team, but and I guess you could say this about anybody. You could argue that Kansas City, struggled against Minnesota this weekend. They didn't look like that AFC championship type team. The only team that has right now is the 49ers. Eagles haven't looked that dominant, just the 49ers. So
I was gonna say, to me, the AFC is just not. It's nowhere near as good as even the NFC. And I agree overall with that sentiment. I mean, I think I personally at this point would still include the Eagles maybe up there at this
But
point.
they haven't looked that way. They struggled that yesterday
Right.
too to get the win.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
to secure the
in
win.
the grand scheme of it, right? I think there's a very. I mean, I'll call it. There's the gap between the NFC and the AFC is noticeable this year, in my opinion. I think.
Well, the whole NFC or just the 49ers?
I still think at the top, like Eagles included, for example, I'd venture a guess that they would.
The Eagles
they would beat.
have won games, so
Right.
yes, I agree with that. But the only team that stood out is like a dominant team, like, Jesus, doesn't look like anybody can beat these guys, is the 49ers, and they just, what they did to the Cowboys last night was just embarrassing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. The 49ers stand out as dominant, and the Eagles are good, really good, but they don't seem like they're winning like easily like the 49ers are.
And then with that being said, neither do the Bills, neither do the Kansas City Chiefs, certainly not the Bengals, who did have a bounce back this week, but still, and now Jacksonville, who was disappointing. This was for a chance to put the Jacksonville Jaguars in the Bills' rearview mirror as far as the AFC goes. But now they got the same record. They could have been 2 games clear. So,
One,
again,
3, 4. Sorry. There's 5, 3, and 2 teams in the AFC right now.
right. And who are they?
So we got, of course, the Bills. We have the Ravens, Steelers, Jaguars, and Colts.
So those are the teams that the Bills are now having in their company at 3-2, and that is not the caliber of team that Bills fans expected the Bills' performance to be on par with through 5 weeks.
Yep. And the Chargers, of course, had a bye week, but they're 2-2. Obviously, they could be a 3-2 team as well. And the Bengals, all of a sudden, as crazy as it is, are only 1 game behind the Bills. They're 2-3.
2-3, right.
And even the Browns, they had their bye week. They're 2-2.
Yeah. So
Obviously,
the
the
Bills
Browns
are
are-
right in the middle of this big mess of teams, and we just named more teams that can make the playoffs. So, we're going to talk about the Bills' upcoming schedule. It's very easy compared to probably these other teams we mentioned over the next through Thanksgiving, let's say. But I do have confidence that just because they're playing an easy schedule that they're going to run the table. I mean, you could argue that their schedule so far was easy: Jets, Vegas, Washington, Miami at home, and Jacksonville, and they're 3-2.
Yeah, this is such a week-to-week league. Like, anything can happen, like you've said before. And that's what I think also makes this league so great, though. You don't want always the best team to just win every week. That would be boring. So it's cool to see the upsets kind of sprinkled in there.
I mean, are we sure? Because it was really fun watching the 49ers kick down.
Yeah,
yesterday.
in that game. But I
But
mean,
if- as a
was it
Bills-
fun when Tom Brady and the Patriots were winning every
fair.
single game every year? No, it wasn't.
No, I didn't like that at all. But if you're a Bills fan, you want to see them be dominant. You feel like they should be dominant, and they just aren't.
I think that's the biggest kind of takeaway from last week before we transition, right, is you come off of what was honestly, I mean, you venture to say it might be one of the biggest just Bills wins in years last week in terms of division opponent, rival comes in, and you just handle them with relative ease, and you go into this past weekend, and frankly just lay an egg the way they did.
Throw away all that goodwill that you built up
Right.
with that Miami win.
Yeah.
And again, I can't pass full judgment on it because I feel the NFL sending them to London to play plays a little bit of a part in it. You know, again, if it was a home game like it was supposed to be, and nobody's traveling, and the Jaguars come to town, the Bills probably win the game, and we're not having this discussion.
Right. All right. Let's transition over because the Bills do return home for Week 6. Sunday Night Football, the Giants come to Orchard Park, 8:20 kickoff on NBC.
What's the line on that going to be?
Well, I'll get to that in just a second. Giants are 1-4 following a 16-31 loss at Miami this past weekend. Their leading passer is the same as their leading rusher now, Daniel Jones, 884 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions with rushing yards of 197 and a touchdown. Their leading receiver, Darren Waller, has received 23 passes for 239 yards. Defensively, the Giants allow an average of 383.8 yards per game, 232 through the air, 151 on the ground. The Bills currently sit at the all-too-early window of 14.5 points favored.
That's kind of what I thought it would be. I actually was thinking 12.5, 13, but man, even more.
Yep. Over-under of 45. Current forecast, 51 degrees and rain projected at kickoff. So that is what lies ahead for the Bills. Kyle, turn over to you because we do have a little bit of a not quite late breaking, but Daniel Jones got dinged up yesterday in the game, but some news coming out just a few moments ago on that.
Yeah, so there have been reports today from ESPN that Daniel Jones is optimistic that he will not miss any time and will play Sunday night. Obviously, that's something to monitor all week, as well as Saquon Barkley, who I believe has a better chance, or I shouldn't say better chance, but a really good chance of playing this week. How many weeks has he missed? 3 now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would expect Saquon to be back. Don't know about Daniel Jones, but can you imagine if Daniel Jones doesn't play? It's Tyrod Taylor, former Buffalo Bill.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting.
Well, there's a lot of connections, right? Because Brian Dable.
Yeah, there's
first
so
time
many
coming back to
former-
Orchard Park.
Yeah. Isaiah Hodgins, a bunch of different players on offense have been in Buffalo before. So, yeah, it's going to be, I would say, a fun and interesting Sunday night.
Yeah, not to
Looks like another winner for NBC.
Yeah.
I mean, just the fact that the Bills got beat this past week, you don't want to be the Giants now, coming to play them. But anything can happen. But, boy, a loss would be just devastating to Buffalo, where, the Giants, nobody thinks the Giants are doing anything at this point, right?
nah.
So it's really, the line's 14.5, right? So
Yeah.
the Bills should get a win, but you do risk just disaster if you don't.
Yeah, I mean, this is a classic for the Bills, right? Kind of a classic. You have to go out and handle business game. I mean, the expectation is that you handle the expectation of what you actually should do. And I mean, if there is a positive, it's you go into a game against a team that is very clearly reeling at the moment for better or worse, right? I mean, things are just not going to what they thought would happen down in East Rutherford for the Giants this year, or I guess maybe for the Jets as well in the grand scheme of it, but either way, and it's a team that they allow a lot of points. I'll go ahead and say it.
They can't
They
protect
just
the
aren't good.
quarterback.
Yeah, they can't protect the quarterback. They just aren't good.
Give them no time.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those games where, personally, I expect the Bills to feast. I really
Well,
do.
they better, and then in the following week they get another crap team in the Patriots.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all things being equal, the Bills should be 5-2 2 weeks from now, and then if we run through the list of 5-2 teams in the AFC 2 weeks from now, I bet we'll find the Bills are in a much better company than they are right now with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Ravens and the teams that you mentioned. So Bills fans can hang their hat on that, but slip up in one of these games and
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's the NFL, right? Well, you guys have been talking about. In theory, there's just no easy outs no matter what anyway. You don't know what's going to be like week to week. I mean, and look, if for example, the forecast stays true, you never know what happens in these like wet games like that either.
It's true. With the Giants, to add another thing to the pile, the Giants are terrible in primetime games.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
This is what? Is this their third one already this year? Right?
I'm not
'Cause
sure.
They opened on Sunday night.
Yep.
And then they had a Monday night 2 weeks ago.
They opened against the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Got throttled.
Right. Yeah. This is their third primetime game
I have a
already.
stat on
this year.
Daniel Jones in primetime. I remember without even looking it up. He's 1-13 in primetime games in his career.
Oh,
So maybe it's good he won't play.
Yeah.
Possibly. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I that's where I'm kind of leaning. I know it's very early on and everything like that, but look, I'll get things started here. I think the Bills win 35-10 on Sunday night. I think that I personally think if they want to shut up, frankly, people like me, in the grand scheme of it, this is the game to do it. Be like, it was just a quote unquote fluke last week. This is actually us. This is our deal, and this is how it is going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you're right, of course. I do think the offense will just be very good this week. The Giants have allowed the 5th most yards per game and the 4th most points per game. So I think the Bills' offense should have a big day. But the defense is just going to be so different. I know they're probably going to get Greg Russo back and Shaq Lawson. And Von Miller should play more. And we know how bad the Giants' offensive line is. So maybe the defensive line will tear up Daniel Jones. But the secondary worries me in the middle linebackers. What is that going to look like moving forward? So, I don't know. I guess I'll just say Bills win this game 33-17.
All right, Jim.
Bills 76, Giants 3.
Wow.
No, I bet it'll be like 42-13.
I feel like the Giants are going to score one of those late, garbage touchdowns and make it 17.
Make it a bad beat for somebody somewhere.
Tyrod Taylor's backup will come in.
Yeah.
So we have pretty much domination across the fronts there, including a Kyle Evans fear of a Scott Van Pelt bad beat backdoor coming at some point towards the tail end there. So, yeah.
But they got to be 5-2
Yes.
after October 22nd.
Yeah.
After the Patriots game, they need to beat the Giants, beat the Patriots 5-2. Then you're back on track where they want to head into. Then Tampa Bay comes to town after that. So, real good potential to be 6-2, and now you're back in the elite of the AFC.
Yeah. Back in the elite of the league, I'd say, collectively at that
Yeah,
point.
the entire NFL.
Yeah. So, boys, appreciate it as always. Should be another fun week of football ahead for the Bills. Knock on wood and everything else. But thanks again, everybody, for listening and watching. You can find Bills Weekly here on FingerLakes1.com, the F1 YouTube channel, and all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Amazon Music. So we'll be back again next Monday recapping what we hope will be a Bills victory. Until then, let's go Buffalo.